Good morning, everybody. Alright, let me take a look at what's going on here. So, the daily 5 MA should be moving up towards... I don't want all these lines, hold on. Going to delete that a moment. Daily 5 MA should be around that 749, 750 range. So I want to mark that out. And let's go to the hourly. Now, these are the call wall and sell walls. So those are going to stay up until the market starts. Now we're slightly above the selling channel, but that doesn't mean that the selling channel isn't going to shift a little bit. So I'm just going to keep that right there just as a reminder. Now I want to see where the max pain of today is. And then once the market opens, I'll mark out the call wall and put wall. So I don't know why I deleted my text. Good morning, good morning. I don't have a whole ton of time to trade today because again I am going on my trip. So I probably have 2.5 to 3.5 hours, give or take. So we'll see what we can do during that time. Now I did end up grabbing some success calls yesterday. I don't remember exactly when I grabbed them. I believe it was down in this range. So I will be selling those fairly soon towards the open because we do have semis pulling down again. We did not close that cup yesterday, which means that this can end up turning into a pretty large rejection if we don't end up seeing buying fairly soon. Doesn't mean that entirely, because since we are down almost 2%, we absolutely can buy that weight up, form a small cup here, and then have the breakout. Sorry if I sound super tired today. want to get these ranges marked out on semis. Now QQQ also did not complete its cup yesterday. So kind of the same pattern that we see on semiconductors, we're seeing on QQQ. We still have a little bit of range to fill. Now we can pull upward and fill that range, or we can end up breaking down. Now did SPY end up closing this cup? Let's see. So it needs to be at the 752.40. We got very close. Only 7 cents away from filling that cup. So not entirely filled, but not exactly far away from the range either. Especially with the pre-market, we're at 752. I read his post last night. I don't know if he did a new one this morning. Let me check. No, I only see his post from last night. I think that's a potential though. Because even though we do see semis down quite a bit this morning, doesn't mean they can't see buying. Usually semis move roughly about $30 a day. So there's definitely plenty of room to buy up to the upside. But that buying needs to close that cup. Semis being bearish is overall bearish for the market. And we have QQQ in a similar position where it also needs to close this cup. SPY not so much. SPY does have some room to run. However, SPY's not going to run if semiconductors and QQQ are ending up dropping. That's just not how those indexes work, you know? So we'll see what's happening with semis and tech. But if they continue dropping and start forming more bearish structure, then very likely we'll see the same sort of results out of the SPY. I thought yesterday was going to be a lot more bullish than it was. Now, again, we are above the selling channel on SPY, but that does not mean that the selling channel top can shift a little bit. Every time we've kind of gotten to that range, we've ended up selling off. And semiconductors right now are looking fairly grim. We actually do have bearish structure to the downside within this right shoulder that we've drawn out. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll know fairly early because if we're going to end up having a sell-off day today, then volatility will be picking up. Yesterday it closed at 88.78, which is fairly low for volatility. So if we're going to be seeing actual selling today, we'll end up seeing that picking up towards that 91, 92 range, if not higher. The HIG closed at 79.75 yesterday, which is a, fairly okay close. But we'll see if we end up selling off from that range or continuing to buy upward. Now my ACN is finally doing good again. Let me tell you, this symbol gave me a heart attack yesterday because it basically pulled down from the 742 all the way to the 129, and then it's back up to the 742. So I'm happy about that. I have a pretty large position in it. So let's see what the portfolio is opening at today. Okay, good. A lot better. Okay, let me go ahead and check the gamma. I also want to check the max pain for today. So the max pain on the SPY is at 748. So we'll mark this in dark orange. Almost looks red. So our max pain is quite low today. I want to see where the daily 5 MA is. It's at that 749.72, so I want to mark that. And let's check our gamma. So we have the call wall and put wall at 750 currently. So we're well above that range right now. So we're going to pull this put wall way down low so that we don't see it right now. And we're going to say call wall, call, and put wall. And we're going to make this orange to signify that it is both the put wall and call wall. We see SPY buying upward. Seeing a little buying out of semis as well. Volatility has dropped down even further. So it did drop down to the 87.75 today. QQQ has closed a small cup here, which is bullish. Semis still have to pull up to the 579.18-ish range. Basically, that's that 579, excuse me, to become bullish. So SPY did close this cup, which means that from that closed cup, potentially we can anticipate some downward price action for the handle to the upside. So with the call wall and put wall being at that 750, that means I actually do want to take a tiny short position. Little Bollinger's at that 751. So I'm just going to take a 750 put. Now, the reason why I'm taking that put is because we are above the call and put wall. Okay, which means that very likely dealers want to try to sell some calls up here and then end up selling some puts down here. So we'll see how that turns out. Does not mean though that we cannot just continue pushing upward. Even though we did close this cup, we could still push upward for quite a while, then build some bearish structure in here, pull down, form the handle. So just be a little cautious with this put. We don't exactly have great conditions for it. The HIG did open at 79.83, currently at 79.79. Volatility pulling up very slightly at the 88.32. Okay, then I want to see semis. Semis were pulling up, but slowly starting to pull down. So we'll see if there's continuation within that. QQQ definitely having some upside, but it does have a lot of cups to work on. Has multiple different ranges, so has that, and then it has this yellow cup as well. So it does have a lot of room to push through if it's going to continue the push. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm just looking through some positions really quick. Volatility still low at the 88.24, so no real selling signal just yet. And the call and put wall are still remaining at that 750. Now again, I am going to be looking for underneath this 750 range today. Doesn't mean we'll get it, but I did open a short basically at that area. So I will be looking for underneath the 750 just to target the put wall. We're seeing the HIG pulling back slightly. It's at 79.77. Again, the high was at 79.83. Volatility still pulling down, so no real major selling signal there just yet. QQQ did close a smaller cup here, so this could be a handle before pushing back upward. Kind of the same thing with SPY here. We did close this smaller cup, and I believe the larger cup as well, which means that we can pull back slightly and then head upward. Now, for my situation, ideally I would love to see a pullback all the way, to retest the 5 mil, which would mean that we would go down basically to the 747, 70-ish range, because that'd be the lower bounds of the 5 mil. So potentially we do have quite a bit of downside. However, they really don't need to build a handle that deep either. They could end up building a pretty tiny handle and then pushing upward further. So we will see how that plays out. I did take some puts, yes. But I think that's very reasonable within the day, as that is where the daily 5 mil is at that 70, or excuse me, 749.72. It'll bounce around that range a little bit. But again, I do look for the $1 to $2 above and below if we're going to test that level. So that's what I'm looking for, and that coincides a lot with where the put wall is currently located. Semis still breaking down pretty hard here, but it does have a lot of room to break down if we're really going to be seeing it pull down heavily today. We have multiple different supports to break through prior to that 732. So we'll just keep these marked out. Potentially also that support. Now the HIG is selling. It's currently at 79.73. Had a low of 79.72. In the time and sales, I'm seeing quite a lot of shares being sold. So if we see a continuation within that, along with continuation of selling in the semiconductors and QQQ, then we should get our level. But our volatility is at the 87.98, which is telling us that, dealers are not hedging positions just yet, which means that potentially we could be pushing to the upside. And we did go from the upper Bollinger to the 20 MA, and then having a small bounce off that 20 MA, which means that we can basically head right back up to the upper Bollinger potentially. So we're just waiting for some signals at this point. And my ACI calls are finally all green. We're almost at our 15 strike, which is very good. Volatility is still low, so until we see that ticking upward, we're really not going to start selling. Semis starting to buy up a little bit as well. Same with QQQ. Volatility ticked up slightly, but it's still very low. It's at 88.03. Was at 87 something. Alright, so we did have the GEX update. So the call wall is at 755. So we're going to change this. And the put wall is at 750. Which kind of changes the thesis a little bit. Because that now means that we technically can trade between that range. Now, can we push underneath that still? Yes, sort of just like yesterday, where we pushed above the call wall. Sometimes that can happen. but that's definitely expanding our range quite a bit to the upside. Now I want to check the daily 5 mile again because it should be towards that 750. So it's at the 749.77. So we'll see if they aim to do a 5 mile test today or not. But based off of volatility, it doesn't look like it. The HIG is slowly starting to buy back upward. We're seeing QQQ and semis still buying upward, even though they're red right now, but shouldn't be red for too much longer. Now ACN is pulling down a little bit, which is fine. We did close this cup, which means that we should be pulling down to form a small handle regardless. So not worried about that. Volatility still pulling down, so it's at the 87.89. QQQ did close this small cup here. So that's one of those cups I was talking about. Needs to close that cup, build a small handle, work on the next cup, build a small handle, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. SPY does have a key support at the 753. Hold on, let me see exactly where this is. 753.50. So we will get that marked out. So potentially we take this range and we can build a handle off that point. Or if we ended up rejecting it, then that would be bearish, because that would be the top of an additional cup to take. But I'm not really seeing a ton of bearish signals today, even though I do have a put going. Currently the volatility is still pulling downward. It's at 87.84. The HIG has been slowly buying upward from the low of the 79.72. Excuse me, sorry for yawning. It's currently at 79.75. So that is a bullish signal. Semis did close that cup at the 579.02, which means that they can be pulling down to form a handle. And it does invalidate the smaller head and shoulders. Should add some puts. It's a little too soon to say. One thing that I will say though is that with us being in the upper Bollinger, that's not exactly the time that I take calls. That's usually when I'm looking for put positions. So I'm going to be biased right now, as that's just my trading style. Unfortunately, they didn't really give us the call opportunity this morning. call opportunity was taken in the pre-market, or the long opportunity anyway. So currently right now I am a little put biased, even though we're not really seeing a lot of signals leading toward that. HIG is back in the green. We're currently neutral, but not red anymore. Now again, just because I'm put biased, because we're at the upper Bollinger, doesn't actually mean that we're going to get a short opportunity. We can absolutely have a day where we just continue pushing against the upper Bollinger. We've seen that happen. However, I'm still not going to take calls at this point. Yep, it's currently at 755. Way up there. Which for the puts isn't great because it's telling us that, again, we have quite a large range on the day. Means that basically we should be trading between this range. Even if we do head down that 750, the likelihood is that we're going to pull very close to that 755 as well. Seeing a little tapering in the ADL, but so far that doesn't mean a whole lot just yet. Again, what we really want to see is volatility picking up, because until the VVIX starts moving, then that's telling us that the dealers are not hedging positions. Now, we don't have any data today, so it could be a slower chop day. We'll have to see. But lack of data usually does cause slower movement within the overall trading session. Not always, but majority of the time. I'm gonna get some water really quick. I'll be right back, everybody. And I'm back, sorry about that. Yeah, the 755 is definitely in play today. Just because again, I have a put bias, just because we're at the upper Bollinger, doesn't mean we can't fly to the 755. That call wall being up there kind of tells dealers that we need to pull to that range or slightly above to sell calls for high premium, high IV. So that's very likely potential. Unless we start seeing a lot of dealer hedging and everything else, then the put side does not look super great right now. But I am still going to be holding my 750 put. The put wall being at 750 kind of means that we should be seeing both these ranges taken, both that call upside and the put downside, whether it's just very momentary and then heading back upward. We'll see. One thing we do have to remember about dealers in the overall market is that it is bullish majority of the time. It is a lot easier to sell calls into the market. So the overall upside being supported today is, you know, a very strong thesis. Especially if we're not seeing volatility move up. Until we see that volatility move up, then again, dealers are not hedging their positions. And if they're not hedging their positions, then what's the likelihood of pulling down very low? Now, if you're in puts, you definitely could take some 755 calls as a hedge. I'm not going to because I'm stubborn, but that's just me. I just really dislike taking calls at the upper Bollinger. Will ACI hit 15 today? Let's check. I think that's likely. We did form a small cup here, so we might pull down slightly to form a handle. But we do have a very crucial support at that, see, yeah, 750.27. So we might be pulling up, or I don't know why I said 750. I meant 15.27. So hooked on SPY. But I do think the likelihood is that we could push upward. We also have a really nice inverse head and shoulders here. So plenty of liquidity to do so. Now we are on the upper Bollinger on multiple time frames. So very likely what I'm kind of expecting here is to push this cup range, this support at the 750.50 or 753.50, build some bearish structure, then head down a little bit. Volatility is pulling down quite heavily as well. It's at 87.64. The HIG has been holding fairly steady at that 79.74, which is quite low compared to the high of the day. The high of the day was at the 79.83. So HIG is definitely not showing a lot of buying in the market just yet. What's the exit? The exit on ACI, let me go back to it really quick. Not the calls. So the exit is kind of going to be around that 1542, but potentially we can push all the way up to the 1645. That would be above the upper Bollinger, but I do think we have the ability to push a little bit above that. We'll see how strong the buying is today though. And let me get this added to my SPY watch list just so that I can easily circle back to it. Volatility is still low. It's at the 87.77. The HIG is still at the 79.74. So that has not been moving pretty much. Usually we'd be expecting that to be buying upward if we're going to be seeing upward price action. Volatility is starting to pull up a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. We did have the low of 87.63. It's currently at 87.79. Semi is still forming a handle here on the 1 minute time frame. Same with QQQ. What's the exit for the American airline puts? I definitely want to see the 15 strike hit. So we still got a whiles on that. I don't know if these are going to land in time. I do have some 17 strike puts though. But we do have this cup formed. Starting to get that bearish structure at the top of the cup like we anticipated. Hit the top support line, or the top resistance anyway. So ideally I am looking towards this 13-ish range, but that might be wishful thinking at this point. So the thing about airlines is that they are heavily correlated with oil prices. So if we see oil prices moving downward, that supports a lot of buying to the upside. If we see oil prices moving back upward, then that supports, the selling. So until we see oil start moving upward again, it's really hard to look at American Airlines and say that we're going to get that 15 strike. Now on the 1 minute time frame on SPY here, we could be building basically that cup and handle. This being that handle still. But we are seeing volatility starting to pick up a little bit. So it was at 87.63 if I remember, currently at 88.07. And we are seeing the ADL starting to pick up. Thank you. But the ADL picking up is showing buying is occurring. So unless we see that shift to the downside, then we're not going to be seeing selling just yet. Kind of the same for our volatility as well. Until we see that really start buying upward, we shouldn't be really expecting heavy selling to occur. I'm going to drag this over just a little bit so that we can actually see that on our screen. HIG's still holding that same level, which I kind of take that as bearish right now. Because again, if we were going to be seeing some major buying to the upside, I would be expecting the HIG to be pulling up towards the high of the day. Not really seeing that occur at all just yet. Now I am going to delete this resistance range because we don't need to worry about that right now. And volatility is slowly creeping back upward, but still super low. So can't really use that as a signal just yet, but it's at 88.09. Again, it did pull down to the 87.63. But if we are going to get selling, we want to be seeing that pick up quite a bit, basically to that 90, 91, 92 plus range, give or take. So again, I am expecting today to have a lot of chop in it when we have days that don't have any data sets supporting it, any news, anything like that, then usually it's going to be a fairly large chop day, which today's looking like so far. Hey, good morning, Jeff. Are the TQQQ calls going to recover? If we see buying today, I think there's large potential that we can. Let me look at TQQQ. Still have a whiles on those, or a large range to push upward in that. So if we do get a push upward today, I would just cut that. Sorry, I haven't had time to update my sheet, but I am working on a system that kind of automatically will track my trades. So that's going to take a little bit to build, but that sheet should automatically be updating hopefully in the next 1 through 3 weeks. Volatility is still low. It's at the 88.08, so just kind of holding that same range. HIG is still holding that same range as well. D79.74. So if we're going to head down towards that put wall or the daily 5 mile, I do expect the volatility to start spiking upward, which so far we're not seeing. Potentially this is an entry on calls to the upside, but I'm not going to take them there. I really want to see a push downward to take calls if I'm going to take calls. HIG dropped slightly, so 79.73. We're seeing semis starting to sell pretty heavily. Not as heavy as they were this morning, but if we do end up pulling down to that 566, then that will form an inverse cup, which will be very bearish, but not at that point yet. Still no real major indicator that we're going to be having some sell-off today. DADL is still looking okay. Volatility still hasn't been picking up very heavily just yet. HIG still holding that 79.74. That's probably the main bearish signal that I see right now is just that the HIG is still sitting at that low. So ideally I would like to pull to the lower Bollinger at this 751.21-ish range, which would get us very close to that put wall. So I would be kind of expecting to pull down very close to that 750-ish range. But we do have a little bit of support built right here at the 750.60. So if we are going to be heading down, then I will be expecting to basically hit that level. Where I think that's actually where I'm going to just toss my market conditional order at. Slightly above it. So let's see, 750.60. I want to put it at the 750.69. And I'll adjust that if necessary. But that's what I'm looking for out of that. Now my HIMS puts are finally near in the money, so that's good. Volatility still holding steady at that 88.08. So this isn't really indicative of dealers hedging positions just yet. But the HIG is at 79.73, so to me that's the bearish signal of the day so far. The other bearish signal is that we're seeing a lot of selling out of semiconductors. And again, if we pull down to the 566.67, then that completes that inverse cup. Even though it won't be part of that head and structure or head and shoulder structure anymore, it will still be bearish structure. So if we see continued selling down that range, that will be setting up, a lot of bearishness on the day. We also have the volatility starting to pick up, so it's at 88.32, still far below the range that I really expect it to be at. If we're going to be seeing major selling, I fully anticipate that to be picking up towards that 90, 91 plus range. But that's why I was hesitant to take calls at that range. I really just dislike taking calls at the upper Bollinger because the likelihood is that there's going to be a mean reversion. Mean reversion just means that the market is pushed outside of its range and that it wants, quote unquote normality. Normality being that 20 mile. Yes, you need to cut the drip calls today. If you're still holding them, they need to be gone. Hey Chase, good morning. Let's see. Currently I'm in puts. I'm just in some of the 750 puts. I have my market conditional order slightly above the support range. So I'll actually just place it where I have my market conditional order. But targeting that support, I think we have the ability to definitely push that range. as we do have quite a large range between the call and put wall today, this whole $5 area. So it's going to be in dealer's best interest to head towards both of those ranges. So even though I'm currently bearish and currently in puts, I do think there's a good case for pushing quite hard today as well. Let's see, do we have time on the 115 Starbucks calls? So let me check. I'm gonna hide some of the structure here. Well, you do have bullish structure right here and right there. So if you do get the breakout, then it should definitely push towards that 113.64, which at that point, that's when I would try to take profit. I don't think it'll hit the 115 in time. Volatility still at the 88.34. Higgs still at the 79.73. Still looking for continued selling out of semis and looking for the volatility to pick upward to really tell us that we're going to be, majorly pushing to the downside. Potentially we could be building some support, at this 20-mile range to head back upward. Kind of see the same out of semis, which again, semis did close that cup, so this potentially could be the handle to push back upward. With that call wall being at 755, there's a very large case for the market to push up towards that range today. Oh, sorry. I don't have a lot of control over the advertisements. It's basically I have them on my stream or I don't. Volatility set at 88.30. Has pulled down slightly. I think it was at the 88.36. And we are seeing semis starting to buy back up again. The ADL on SPY is looking pretty good. Looks fairly good on semis as well. not so great on QQQ. So we'll see how that turns out. But overall, if we're going to be seeing semis buying, if we're going to be seeing SPY buying, then very likely we'll see QQQ buying as well. The HIG is still holding that lower level though. It's at the 79.73 still. Now if we do push from here, we should hit that 753.50 range, which will be the top of a larger cup. Just a very slow, choppy day so far. I have my market conditional order at the 750.69, slightly above this support range at the 750.60. So if we are going to head down, then we should expect to head down towards that support range. But it's still a little too soon to say that we are actually going to head down. Potentially, again, we can close this cup at this 753.50 and then aim to build some bearish structure, which that bearish structure can take us all the way up to 755, potentially above that. It is a very, very large cup. Basically weeks worth of trading sessions to close that cup. So it's looking likely we do. Especially when we are seeing buying out of semiconductors again. Almost back up to the high of the day. And then QQQ's been buying back upward as well. Oh, there's some selling. There we go. Okay, my conditional order got filled. So we had something go on. That's fun. Okay, there we go. So I guess we sold a little early, but volatility is at 9102. Nice. So something big just happened. I don't know what. But now I want some calls. If I can get to SPY in time. So I'm going to target the 752. Very cool. So we did grab calls, and they are currently up. We're able to sell our puts as well. So for the calls, I just want the 752.36. So I'm just going to put a conditional order at that 752.31. So good, we did good on our puts. Didn't really expect that massive death candle all the way down from 753 all the way to 748, but sometimes the market works in our favor. Yeah, you're very welcome, everybody. Now, I had no clue that was coming, so don't thank me too much. I really had no idea that we were gonna have some crazy random sell like that. That was very, very, very random. Now, the HIG is at 79.68, so we do want to be seeing this pull back upward to support our call buying. Volatility did pull up all the way to 291. It's currently at 89.42. So our calls should be good. Perhaps the market makers were just trying to shake people out of call positions. I have no idea. But again, kind of my trading style, sell strength, buy weakness. If we see a massive death candle down like that, then I'm going to be jumping in. If we are tapering off at the top and, you know, sitting at the upper Bollinger for the entire day, then I'm going to be taking some puts. Doesn't always work out, but that's just how I trade. Very, very good, Mike. So again, I have my conditional order set slightly below where the 20 MA is. It's very likely going to fill any minute. And that's probably going to be my 0 DTs for today. Because again, I don't have a lot of time. Um, I do, or I am going on vacation today, so those might be my trades today. Now, we do have the ability to go all the way up to the 755. So, if you have multiple calls, I would try to hold a runner um, towards that 753 plus. I think it's very, very reasonable to pull up towards that range. We're seeing a little bit of buying out of the HIG again, so we're back up to the 79.70. And volatility has pulled down very, very aggressively since that death candle. So I think that the upside from here is going to be very strong. I just don't have the time to trade it, unfortunately. I am personally looking for let's see what I have my market conditional order set to again. I have it set to the 752.31. Now the price I got my calls at, I got them at 0.81. They're currently 1.30. Oh, it's because there was news about Iran. Um, Interesting. Iran wants to continue talks again, but I don't know if our president actually wants to do that anymore. Very adverse reaction out of the market, which makes me think that very likely this is going to turn into a fair value gap. Now, I know we haven't discussed that a lot in the streams, but fair value gaps are basically when there is a bump in the road. So the road was meant to be up here, trading in this range basically. And all of a sudden, we had this major push below. So the way I like to think about it is like a pothole in the road. Okay. Fair value gap just means that they're filling that pothole, driving over it, doing whatever. And once they drive over it, they're trying to resume back to normality. So that's what I'm assuming is going to happen today. It doesn't mean I'm correct about that. We might end up still turning down and selling off. But I am expecting to hit my exit. Even with that big sell downward, the ADL is looking really strong. Volatility has been pulling downward. The HIG is not back to its original level yet, but it's starting to climb back up. Still at that 79.70. So we should get our exit that I have set, which I'm going to drag this up to it just to signify that. And we will pull that to the center so we can actually see what's going on. So once we get our exit, assuming we do, I'll be very happy with the trades today. And this is a big reason why I set market conditional orders, because when you get massive candles down like that, it's really hard to time it properly with selling, because you only have, I mean, we literally only had seconds to target the full entire bottom, which that's not what I targeted at all. I targeted that 7, how do I remember, 751 something, 753, whatever it was. It was at 750, 58. Um, so it's like, yeah, I left some profit on the table, but not really, because it would be very, 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 very difficult to target the sell on that unless you did a market sell, um, you know, perfectly timing it. But I don't got the StarCraft fingers like I used to anymore. I can't do the, 700 APM on my keyboard and, and everything. So I like to keep market conditional orders. So we're gonna hit it in like 10 cents. If the markets give us our level, which they should. We were in the lower Bollinger. There was plenty of time to accumulate some calls. So that should hit right now. I should be hitting a ding, which I'm not. Oh, it didn't hit yet. It hit the 752.31, but it needs to pull above that. So if it ends up selling off at this point, I'm going to be kind of salty, but I don't think it will. We're seeing the volatility pulling down. It's at 88.87. Remember that was all the way up at 91. Still seeing our HIG at 79.70. So the lack of selling in the HIG is, to me, a bullish signal at this point. When we did push down so heavily, if dealers were going to continue pushing downward, I would expect the HIG to be selling downward as well. Now, our market conditional order is slightly below the 20-MA, so if we're going to retest the 20-MA, we should be pulling above that level. That's the plan anyway. Yeah, and that's okay. Um, see, I'm down 20% on my Oracle calls. I really dislike Oracle right now. Um, I don't think it's in a good position to take calls on. I know Carter and some others in the Discord have been kind of ranting and raving about Oracle, but I don't think the structure looks good at all. Volatility is picking up a little bit, so it's at 88.94. Did drop down to the 88.83. So a slight increase in volatility. Again, I'm gonna be upset if I miss my order price by like a penny. Happens so often for me. The ADL is still looking good though, and the HIG is still looking fine. I would like to see the HIG buying upward to really signify that we are going to push our level. So far it has not done that. It's just it bought up from the 79.60 whatever it was at, but it's currently nope, it dropped back down to 79.69. So we're going to lower our market conditional order here, even though I do think the upside, never mind, didn't need to, it hit. Okay, we're good. Good to go. Okay, cool. So those are some nice trades. So let me look at Oracle for you really quick, even though I don't think it looks good at all. This is kind of what I was explaining to Carter last night, and let me go ahead and make some of these lines a little thinner so we can actually see. But each time these support ranges are tested, it weakens. Okay, so we see it tested in here, we see it tested here, tested here, tested right there. I'm gonna mark it, but it's not gonna look good. Tested in here, and currently being tested again. Now, what do you notice from each one of these tests? Okay. And we even go back further. So in this area, testing on this range became bullish liquidity. Saw a nice bounce. Testing in this area became very bullish liquidity. We saw a very, very huge bounce. But this is starting to weaken. Okay. Saw a small bounce. Very small bounce. Did have a decent bounce here. But even then, it's still much smaller than what the previous major bounce was. So what's the likelihood of our next, quote unquote, major bounce being half the distance or even less? I think that's extremely likely, especially with our Bollingers and everything starting to expand to the downside more. I actually think we're going to be pushing towards that 119. Doesn't mean that's fully the case though. Okay. So getting rid of some of these ranges really quick. What is in our favor is that the 20 MA is currently at that 159.66. Okay. Now we haven't pushed to the lower Bollinger in quite a while. Last lower Bollinger push was March 30th, give or take. We did exit the upper Bollinger, which means that people still have puts going. Okay, people are still actively shorting this, and they're going to be actively shorting this until they get their range. Okay. So it's hard for me to look at this as something bullish right now, other than the fact that we are very close to the lower Bollinger. We are at a support range. But even with that support range, I believe we're seeing an inverse cup closing. Potentially seeing, so two different structures I'm looking at. We have this inverse cup and handle, which is a bullish structure. But we also have potentially this inverse cup building. So if that inverse cup builds, that's telling you almost exactly that we're going to be heading down towards that 119. If we see the breakout of this inverse head and shoulders, then you should get your, 159, 160. Really just is based on those structures at this point. But overall, I'm not bullish on Oracle, like even 1%. Um, Not that I would want to short this at this point either, but it's not a good chart at all. Um, and even on the daily time frame, you can see this very large head and shoulders. Well, what does that do for our weekly time frame? That pulls us underneath this $100 range. So we could be seeing Oracle sink quite a bit. The ADL as well is highly reflective of that. You can see how since the high it has just been pulling down, pulling down, pulling down. Slight pullback upward, but it's just been getting nuked since. So hard to be bullish on that. We timed our exit really good with that MCO. It pulled up about 30 cents above that, but really nailed that. Let me check HIMS because that's a good question. I need to see that. HIMS is at 33. I am looking a little further down. However, it is at that 20 MA, okay? And the 20 MA can cause adverse bounces to the upside. But I think we've been seeing a lot of bearish structure building, and I think that with all that bearish structure building, we can start to target some of these lower support ranges. That's not going to be to the penny, but it'll be reasonable to look at still. So I think that some of these lower supports are definitely within the scope of our current contracts because my contracts literally expire next week. But we have to be careful because we absolutely could bounce off this range. Okay, and historically, you know, the 20 MA is a very good range to bounce off of, and we've seen that happen on HIMS multiple times before. But we've also haven't tested the lower Bollinger since May, which means that usually I usually expect the upper Bollinger and lower Bollinger to be tested about once a quarter. We've seen it pushed into the upper Bollinger quite a bit this quarter. So I do think that the likelihood of it starting to pull downward below this 20 MA is, you know, definitely within the scope of our contracts currently. But if you really want to be safe and make sure you cut profit, then take some profit at this range. And maybe that's a good idea, you know, because I have multiple contracts going. So there's no harm in taking profit on a couple. So that's what I'm doing. Taking small bit of profit on those HIM puts. Now our ACI position is doing super good. And I want to look at that really quick. So I really am looking for that 1527. I do think that's super well within the scope of our contracts. We've been seeing buying supporting it. We've been seeing the ADL slowly climbing up since hitting that low. So it looks good. I think we can definitely hit that 15 plus range. You have one contract, go ahead and sell it. If you only have the one contract, then go ahead and sell it. I'd rather you just take profit than um, the position going south on us and you end up getting burned on it. So hopefully everybody did very well in SPY today. And technically a call entry is starting to open back up again. Not yet. I would look for a little bit further push. One thing about Bollingers, and this isn't the best example because we rode the upper Bollinger quite heavily this morning, but usually Bollingers like to stick to two candles. Okay, so usually you have two candle periods where you're above that upper Bollinger or below the upper or below the lower Bollinger, excuse me. So we already have the first candle starting to build within the lower Bollinger, which means that I kind of do expect that lower low into pushing upward. Okay, so while I'm personally not going to take calls on it, I just don't have the time today. Um, I do think there's a good case to do so. Especially when we've been seeing volatility slowly trickling down. It did hit the 88.77, currently at the 88.94. It did pull up to the 89.06, but we did have that massive push to the upside this morning within volatility, and again, so far it has been trickling down. So I think there's, definitely the thesis of heading up still within the cards. Now on semis, when we had that major sell to the downside, we actually did not close an inverse cup. Okay. Remember I talked about we needed to push to the 566.67. So that major selling candle didn't really reflect on semiconductors at all. Um, it did on QQQ, but even then it has not invalidated any of the bullish structure to the upside. Now I'm gonna go say bye to my daughter really quick, so I'll be right back in just a couple minutes. Would I look for a Tesla 750 support before entering calls? Um, Personally, just within my set of rules for how I trade, I look for mean reversions. Um, we've already sold the puts in terms of dealers selling puts to the market. A lot of people probably tried to buy puts on that major candle downward. So, are we done with the put wall for today? I don't know. Potentially. But I think as the dealers, we already sold the put wall out. Doesn't mean we can't continue to sell into the put wall, but I do think that the case is there. Anyway, let me say bye to my daughter really quick. Sorry about that, I'm back. Yeah, Mike, I was talking to you about the ACI exit. We should hit above that 15 range. I feel very confident in that. So I would definitely wait for that. For the call entry, I think it's very viable. Our volatility has been pulling down as well. So it's currently at 88.80. So you may not hit your call entry perfectly to the penny, but do I think we're going to be likely heading upward today? I think the potential is extremely, extremely high. But we do need to be seeing the HIG starting to buy upward. Okay, so the HIG is selling downward a little bit. It did hit a low of the 79.63 when we had that major sell earlier. It was starting to hold that 79.70, but now it's currently at 79.66. So until we start seeing the HIG really buying to the upside, I would be a little hesitant. Um, Even though I still think that the call entry right now is pretty ideal. Um, but if you continue seeing that selling downward in terms of the HIG, and if you continue to see volatility picking upward, then I would just exit those calls with a very small loss. Um, but I do think there's, plenty of potential for that upside move. So let me look at open again, because it's been a while. So currently we are exiting the upper Bollinger on the daily time frame, which again with mean reversion trading, that's really what I like to focus on. Let me go ahead and delete that structure, delete some of this stuff. But with the mean reversion, to me this is bearish. Okay, even though we do have a very quality support range at this roughly 565, this would not be the range for me to take calls at. Okay. Um, how I like to trade is I like to target the lower Bollingers because that gives me a very long runway to target that upside. So, not really something I want to chase right now. There'll be, we'll set up some other trades next week that are a lot better. Yeah, I think that's very fair, Mike. All right, everybody, your calls should be doing good since I called out that entry. Um, Again, just continue watching the HIG, continue watching the VVIX. I think there's actually a really nice potential of taking a Success put for today, basically 0 DTE, for the 4 strike. Um, if we are going to get that upside, then we should be seeing very, very massive upside from semiconductors, which means that we should be seeing the 4 strike puts land within the money. So I actually want to look at the price of those because I could definitely sell those while I'm driving. Yeah, the 4 strike puts are only basically $2 right now per, so I'm gonna grab a whole mess of those and see if we get lucky and land them. So if those do run in the money, the 4 strike 0 DT puts on Success, then basically those, contracts that we're buying for $2 should turn into, roughly $15 to $20 per. So we'll see if that plays out. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and end stream here because I do gotta get ready for my trip. Um, if you do like my streams, it'd be great if you guys could share it because I'd really like to get more than like 30 something viewers a day. It's been really hard growing the channel and everything. Um, but yeah, if you enjoy my content and everything, share it with a friend or family member who trades, and maybe they'll enjoy it too. Is there any final questions before I head out for today? Yep, I'll be back on Monday unless I drowned in the ocean or something, but not planning on that. What's the exit on the Success puts? Um, so basically I'd be correlating that to semiconductors. Now, with semiconductors, we potentially could be running, a whole $30 to the upside today. I have no clue. So what I'm looking for on Success is that I'm looking for one of these major resistance ranges to be retested on SOX. Okay. If we get that, and if we get Success pulling below that, $4 put strike to where our puts actually become in the money, then I'll probably just work on starting to cut them at that point. I'm not looking for some massive home run on that position. I'm just looking for that position to, you know, double, triple, quadruple, something like that. Which for me, I grabbed 10 of the puts, was super cheap to do so. Um, so, potentially basically spending 20 bucks for it to run to maybe 80 to $100 if we get our upside price action that we're looking for. So while I don't have a very specific exit, um, I think it's potential that we could see even this 3.75, which that would pay us massively on these positions. So thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. And thank you, Vasily. Hope I said that right. Alright, everybody, I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a fantastic weekend. I'll try to enjoy mine and clear my head a little bit, and then I will be back Sunday evening, do my Sunday video, and then I will see you all Monday morning. So take care, everybody. Have a great weekend. Feel free to message me on Discord. Doesn't mean I'll have the opportunity to check it, but feel free to do so. If you're going to message me in a primary channel, just make sure you tag me because I literally will not see it if you don't. But yeah, have a great day, everybody. Take care. Yeah, you're very welcome.